getting into what we were saying before, this bit of content does actually, survival actually does fix a lot of the problems we used to have, but it doesn't fix everything, does it?
That's correct.
I mean, let's talk about some of the things that maybe this does fix, and maybe some of the things also that it doesn't.
So we just saw a bit of survival gameplay. If you're tuning into the breakout, you will not have seen that, but you can click these other videos to check that out. And that's a condensed version of The Division that I just think really works. In its core design, it just makes sense. I don't think you can transition that out, because I think the things that make that good are the fact that it's temporary, the fact that you don't get to carry gear in there, and that every piece of gear you find is interesting. I think in that context, a lot of the Division's mechanics really work. But like out here, like everybody's just waiting. We're all just, I'm not even queued up. That's a problem. Let's go fix that. But like, I could go do one of several daily events or weekly events, or I could go do underground or whatever, and these guys all have stuff for me to do. But I don't really care. Like, I think this is a much better version of the Dark Zone. I could go back into the Dark Zone, and I could go do PvE content, but at that point, I'm totally fine with jumping out to another game.
Yeah, sure.
So it's interesting because, like, here is the survival, right? And here is the core game, and you get rewards that go this way, and of course nothing goes that way because it would ruin it, right? You can't take gear in here. So, like, I don't care about this at all, because it's not giving me anything to the experience that I want to play.
Actually want to have, right?
But anyway, and that kind of leads into, I think, a discussion of where do they go from here.
Right.
And, like, I think people initially, I would go as far to wager that The Division succeeded for two reasons.
Sure.
One, that it was a shared world shooter on PC, and I think PC audience was clamoring for that in lieu of Destiny.
Right. Sure.
Because I think that was a very, like, PC-oriented game that only came out on consoles, and I think a lot of PC players, including myself, were like, I want that. I don't really want to play that on Xbox. I want to play with my PC friends on the PC, so I don't have to have a computer open with my Destiny inventory and be playing it on a console and managing it on a computer.
Right.
That's ridiculous. So I think that helped. But also, I think the Dark Zone was really cool. The promise of the Dark Zone was really interesting. It was this emergent, PvP-driven area.
To me, that's what the Division was supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you wrote an article to that. You said that in your review, and I couldn't agree more. Now, I was fine with it, if we zoom out here, I was fine with it in the context of this self-contained PvP area, and this is all just kind of like Care Bear stuff. That's cool. I enjoy, I really enjoy group PvE. I'm a big group PvE guy. I don't think the Division's group PvE is particularly great, but it's a nice break from this, like, kind of, more oppressive PvP competitive area, which I love, by the way. But the whole thing just didn't pan out. And so I think people were interested in the Dark Zone. With the resurgence, it's sending a very clear message to Ubisoft that people are interested in the PvP in this game more than anything else, and that they're interested in the idea of survival. They're interested in the idea of this exploration.
They're interested in the idea of stakes. Like that's
right.
That to me is what was so sorely missing.
Right. And so the next expansion that's going to come out is The Last Stand, which is a base building horde mode kind of deal. I don't care. Like, so it's weird to me, the year one content that they planned it out. I guess maybe they were doing like a shotgun spread to see what hit, and they found something that hit now.
Yeah.
But I hope that they pivot now. I really, like, I don't think that the main player base is going to carry over into the Last Stand mode. Maybe they will. Maybe like survival may still be fresh at that point, and it may still be okay. And now you have this other cool PvE mode you can play too, and there's your kind of like duality of PvP and PvE. But I would love for them to continue to iterate on survival and maybe either give us new maps, new elements. Well, think on that front. We're loading in, by the way.
Sure. But in terms of those new elements, though, I think that the logical thing to do, and what I would want to see the most, is why are all these interesting systems and why are all these interesting other modes? Why are they all disparate experiences from each other? I would say lump them all into survival. So yeah, on its own, in the context of just kind of like you said, Care Berry, PvE, kind of experience. Yeah, building a base and defending it against waves of dudes is like, in that context, is boring. Imagine doing that in survival. Imagine if there was.
Oh my God, you're so right.
Yeah.
I think base building lends itself very well. I think things like PvE strikes and missions don't necessarily work in that context because of the time limit, and I think the time limit is what helps makes it great. And when you think about a MOBA, like the thing a MOBA taught me is that re-rolling is fun.
Sure.
Right? Starting a new game with new opportunities. Half the fun of survival for me is being able to find an AK in the first 10 seconds and be the most powerful player on the server. That's really cool. And you can't get that when it's so persistent. But you're right. Base building, I think, could be really interesting. And maybe more persistence there. At that point, you're kind of treading DayZ territory, but why not? That's kind of initially what I thought this game was going to be.
Yeah,
So.
and that's certainly the way that they presented it to the audience, without a doubt. And like pretty much every gameplay trailer and demonstration they made at any trade show, that's what it seemed like it was going to be. Like I definitely think that all these individual ideas, the idea of underground and like an endless cycle of PvE dungeon style content, that was an interesting idea. I think survival seems very interesting. I think the idea of what Last Stand is going to be sounds potentially interesting. But having them all be islands is not necessarily beneficial. Like survival stands on its own, it seems like, very well compared to underground and to what we think that Last Stand might be, and what the Dark Zone ended up being, at least in its initial state after release. But man, like, what if they could find a way to tie all these together? I think that would be very exciting.
Yeah, I agree.